Hello, I am Yogini Sunita, and this is Meditation, Yoga, and Stuff podcast. I believe my dharma or my life's purpose is to share my understanding of meditation, yoga, and Ayurveda, holistic healing science of India. I make these amazing wisdoms accessible and adaptable for present times. So let's start. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today's our guest. I'm very excited about having Amy on our podcast. So, Amy, can you please introduce yourself? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sunita, for the invitation. Really appreciate it. So my name is Amy Gajjar. I work as an integrative GP, so more holistic minded these days. But I'm from London. I've been in Sydney for almost 13 years now. And I started off in conventional medicine, sort of mainstream general practice. And then my journey, which, a lot of that journey in changing how I work has happened while I've been in Sydney. So I've done sort of training through ACNEM, which is Australasian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine. And obviously I've done yoga training, meditation training, coaching, NLP, etc. So it was for my own interest, but it was also to have these tools and knowledge so that I can help people as well. So I love, again, thinking of health in all its dimensions, not just the physical, but obviously spiritual, mental, emotional. And yeah, from a time where it was just 10-minute appointments back in the UK, feeling quite frustrated and overwhelmed and also helpless that you can always help people. You're just giving out medications. This journey over many years and all the knowledge and experience I've gained is really, it's made my life more fulfilling such that I didn't end up leaving medicine, whereas that was a thought back then in the UK. And I enjoy what I do. And I feel, I guess with everything I've done, and obviously still learning, learning never stops. It's nice to be in position to be able to empower others as well, and for them to look at their life in a more holistic way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate, you doing this, because the more, holistic approach the doctors will bring in, I think that will help everyone. It's really, I really have a soft spot for you because you're doing this, it's such an amazing work you're doing. And you also wrote a book recently. Can you tell us about that? What is it about? And explain us, like, what is the inspiration for the book?
Yeah. So I published a book last year called Slow Butterfly, How Healing Your Thyroid Transforms Everything. So one of my interests is thyroid health. And I guess it stemmed from the fact that, well, one, I'd always wanted to write, and, I hope to sort of still write many more books. And I was basically seeing a lot of patients, especially when I started, holistic practice on the Northern Beaches. And I was seeing a lot of patients with thyroid issues who they may have been diagnosed and were put on medication by their GPs or their endocrinologists, the specialists, but they still weren't feeling better. But there were also patients who had all these sort of symptoms and nothing had been diagnosed. And also, I guess, also my own personal experience, when I've been in stressful situations, I can reflect back on that and think, yeah, the thyroid was definitely affected. And I just felt that there's not, the answer when it comes to hypothyroidism, which is underactive thyroid. And I focused on that because that's the most common. Like, there's underactive, there's overactive, but hypothyroidism is much more common. And I really wanted to, I guess, when I was seeing patients, I was also doing my training with ACNEM. So at the same time, I was learning as well. So even though I'd seen patients back in the UK, my knowledge then was very limited, whereas now with this increasing understanding, I knew what to look for, what blood tests to do, also how to interpret them, because it's not about simple things like just looking at what's in the range. It's looking at, well, is this optimal? And also look at the clinical picture and not just the numbers on the blood test. And I've just found over time that with that increased understanding, I was able to sort of see into what was going on, interpret the blood test, arrange for more appropriate testing, which helped to give a better picture. And then, hypothyroidism, it is a lifestyle illness, like most of what we're seeing today. And we know it's quite common knowledge amongst GPs now, hypertension, diabetes, yes, that's all lifestyle, but so is thyroid health. And there's not enough awareness around the fact that there's so much we can do in our lifestyle, as well as obviously herbs and nutrients and things like that, and other allied health modalities that can actually help with thyroid issues as well. So it was more to bring that awareness and therefore help empower people that there's actually a lot within you that you can do beyond necessarily taking a medication, because that's the only answer in mainstream medicine.
Yeah. And that's what I thought, this is actually very good information, because I thought that if you have hypo or hyperthyroidism, you take medicine to manage that, because that's what I knew.
Yeah.
My understanding was that's what it is. But you're saying that it is a lifestyle disease kind of thing, which can you elaborate a little bit about that, and what are the symptoms people should look into? How does it manifest basically?
Yeah. So with underactive or hypothyroid, so the common symptoms would be sort of fatigue, lethargy. There can be gut issues like constipation. There can be sort of cold hands, cold feet, sort of palpitations. Hair loss is another sort of common one as well. Weight issues as well. There's very wide-ranging symptoms because the thyroid gland is controlled with so many functions. So we tend to see various symptoms, but they tend to be the more common ones. There can also be high cholesterol, gallbladder issues, etc. as well. So the easy way to think of it is imagine, because the thyroid gland is involved in metabolism and mitochondrial function, energy production, etc. Think of it slowing down. So everything just slows down in the body. So there can also be low mood, obviously sluggish bowels, and sometimes constipation is one of the main symptoms that someone may have. So yeah, many different symptoms involving many different systems, because the thyroid gland is involved with so much.
Right.
And so it can be, in a way, it can be easy to diagnose it, especially when you put all the bits of the puzzle together. But on the other hand, because fatigue can be many other things as well, it can be also easy to miss as well.
That was my another question, because fatigue is seen fatigue can be very common. I personally experience with my Ross River virus journey that, I feel fatigue, but how do I know that which fatigue is which? So it's better to go to right, person, a doctor who knows what is this about, I think, and they can put 2 into 2 together. Does it make sense? Is that what?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely look at the whole picture, and so yes, certainly looking at the thyroid blood test results as well as everything else, just to sort of connect all the dots as well, because obviously other things can affect the thyroid affects other things, so it's all interrelated.
And so how holistic approach can help? For example, how yoga or meditation can help in these conditions? Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah. So with the thyroid, so in terms of one of the common factors involved with underactive thyroid, I would say stress is definitely the biggest one, and as that goes with many chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
So, for example, just to go through a few basics in terms of what we need for thyroid function. On the one hand, we need appropriate levels of nutrients like iron, selenium, zinc, magnesium, etc. And there's also many factors that can reduce that thyroid function. And stress is one of the biggest ones. Other factors are toxins, like environmental toxins, heavy metals, halogens, gut dysbiosis, so when we have an imbalance of the good and the bad bacteria. But stress is definitely a big one. So this is where obviously meditation and yoga is really helpful, because the cortisol levels, like high stress hormones, depresses thyroid function. So, and what's happening in a way is that when the body is perceiving stress, whether that's emotional stress or stress because of nutrient deficiencies or environmental stress, it's sort of trying to do the right thing, saying, well, this is stress here. We need to slow things down. We don't want to waste away. So yes, it's important to diagnose it, but it also take a step back and say, well, why is this happening? Symptoms are messengers. What's going on here that the thyroid gland is being slowed down rather than just giving a medication. And because stress is certainly, day-to-day life, and I think we've all normalized stress, that's just life. But certainly, obviously, in the last few years, I would say there's probably more hypothyroidism because of what's been going on in the last few years. So I think managing our stress and our nervous system is so important through meditation and restorative yoga.
Right.
Not necessarily Bikram.
Definitely not yoga. Yes. I understand that. So maybe conscious awareness into movements. I think we can look at it from that point of view, and creating almost like a parasympathetic response through restorative yoga or calming practices. So I think that is going to impact a lot. I think also with the relaxation practices, will they help, like yoga nidra or guided relaxation practices and things like that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like many patients I see, they're already doing perhaps a bit of yoga and meditation, but often it's directing them towards a more appropriate form, like more restorative, rather than sort of Bikram or anything that's energy depleting. We want to restore that energy and we want to balance the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic versus parasympathetic. So doing the right type of yoga for that time. But the pranayama practices like alternate nostril breathing, even if someone's starting out, I think even just that simple awareness of, just abdominal breathing, because so many people are just breathing from up here and not knowing about it. So just initially that simple awareness of breathing, abdominal breathing, nasal breathing, correcting, just looking into simple things like that. And then you may just be starting off with like the box breath or abdominal breathing and, alternate nostril breathing. But yoga nidra is definitely something I recommend to a lot of people because there's often associated sleep issues as well. And and I, even in my book, like sleep chapter comes before anything else because I really feel often we pay too much attention to see some other aspects of lifestyle, but if we get the sleep right, as we know, a lot of things can just fall into place from that as well.
So I'm going to elaborate a little bit about the breathing. So those who are new to this, concept of what is pranayama. Pranayama is yogic breathing practices, and alternate nostril is basically you inhaling through one nostril, exhaling through other, inhaling through the other nostril, exhaling through the first, and that becomes one round. And also just breath awareness, consciously just observing breath. That's what we call in yoga breath awareness. And the box breath is basically, these are all beautiful techniques. Do you have them in your book? You have written the book?
I do.
Okay. We can put the link for your book in our show notes so that people who are curious about more practices, they can, go to that resource. Basically, it's accessible for them. I was also curious about hormonal changes, particularly from women's point of view. Does that impact the thyroid gland as well? Does it like, I've heard a lot of menopausal women going through things like thyroid issues and things like that. So I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. All hormone systems affect each other. So, for example, thyroid and adrenal, there's definitely a link there in terms of, we know high cortisol levels, like the stress hormone, will depress thyroid function. One of the common things that I tend to see in women is there's often what is known as estrogen dominance. So basically, in, let's just say, the second half of the cycle before the period, there's meant to be a specific ratio of like estrogen to progesterone, but these days often we see higher progesterone levels, and that can be for many reasons, but these days there's a lot of environmental reasons for that as well. So endocrine disruptors like plastics, heavy metals, etc. The pill, you basically just increase the estrogen, and that also can depress thyroid function as well. And then there's obviously certain times where you get this shift in the body, like menopause is a common time, and also even after birth as well, that there's an immune shift, and often people can actually develop thyroid problems, but it's often put down to baby blues or postpartum depression. So they're the sort of two times that we see it, sort of like an increase in thyroid issues. And then certainly with menopause, like, even though, yes, the estrogen might be declining, but the relative estrogen to progesterone balance is still not right. So it can still affect thyroid. Also, as we get older, especially after menopause, when the bones are getting weaker and the bone density reduces, that we know you can also get heavy metals and toxins being released from the bone. Because so what when it comes to all the environmental toxins that we're exposed to, and obviously a lot more these days, it gets stored in sort of fat tissue and bone as well. And so when we have that coming, that changing, say after menopause, those toxins can get released to the system, and they can also affect the thyroid function as well.
Okay. So how can you give us some tips, like how can we look after ourselves? Obviously, if you're okay with this, we can put your information and they can see you, obviously, but those who are overseas, maybe, can just get these tips and start working with that. So I will really appreciate if you can give some tips for people to take on board now, just starting from now. So
so I would start off with the foundations of looking at all the different aspects of lifestyle, and again, there's different perspectives. For example, let's take that diet, for example. In the literature, for example, gluten and dairy-free diets have been shown to help hypothyroidism. Now, just a quick point there, that there's something called Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition of the thyroid. That's the most common form of hypothyroidism that we see. So basically, yes, most cases of underactive thyroid are autoimmune, but it's only if you do the right testing that will get diagnosed. But in the studies, like, for example, gluten and dairy-free diets have been shown to help many autoimmune conditions, including Hashimoto's. And again, I wouldn't say there's one specific diet, but we want that healthy, balanced diet without the sugars and the fried foods and the processed foods. Plenty of sort of rainbow-colored of vegetables and fruits and everything. So just a nice, clean, balanced diet, like a Mediterranean-style diet. Obviously, the exact diet will depend on the person. There's also something called the autoimmune diet, which is quite restrictive. But again, that has been shown to help, but that's something that really you want to sort of be working with someone if you're going on that. But I guess the point is that diet does make a difference. And it also depends what else is going on with that person. So if there's gut issues, they may benefit from what is known as a low FODMAP diet, which is a diet known to be helpful for IBS. And then, of course, you've got the Ayurvedic perspective as well. So totally different lens where, if someone is drawn to that, they can see an Ayurvedic practitioner and, have a diet based on their constitution as well. And regardless of which diet anyone follows, I think getting that vata under control is definitely the main thing. The sort of grounding foods and regular eating times. And making sure that there's that sort of fasting window between dinner and breakfast, so we're not just eating all the time, because that fasting period between dinner and breakfast the next day also allows the body to heal as well. So a lot of, I mean, to be honest, a lot of, you know, what we now see is modern lifestyle medicine or functional medicine. A lot of it's Ayurveda.
Yeah,
it's you know, now we're just getting the, I guess, the science behind it, as you know, in terms of published papers and everything. But yeah, it's, you know, regularity is the key when it comes to anything, and so I wouldn't say there's one diet per se. You know, we want that healthy overall diet, and that's also very individual depending on what else is going on with that someone. Sleep, totally critical. I think, you know, sleep is it's so important. You know, so much happens when we sleep. We detox, we heal, and you know, we need approximately 78 hours of sleep. So again, we want that regular sort of bedtime and winding down and relaxation before bed, like yoga nidra or some sort of breathing practice or something. Movement wise, again, any sort of movement, but again, not too much, not too little, because too much exercise can also be pro-inflammatory. It can just wear out the body, and then too little movement just gives that stagnation. So again, if people are very fatigued, that's the last thing on their mind. But you know, even any simple movement can be good. Just simple restorative yoga postures, for example, gentle walking is totally fine, and someone can build that up. They shouldn't feel that they need to go to the gym or do anything intensive. It's about working with your body and seeing what feels right. Obviously, yeah, environmental toxins. That's something that, you know, we're seeing a lot more of these days, and it probably is a big component of a lot of chronic illness that we're seeing today. So simple things like, you know, trying to avoid plastics, because the plastics have been known to be endocrine disruptors in relation to thyroid, as well as contributing towards excess estrogen. So, you know, simple things like, you know, just try and have coffee in a normal cup, not a takeaway cup, and you know, not heating foods in plastic, and so forth.
I'm smiling ear to ear because it's basically Ayurveda's advice. You know, according to Ayurveda, a lot of diseases are basically lifestyle diseases, and if we start consciously looking into like how is our digestion, and the first thing, as you know, in Ayurveda, we ask how is your digestion. You know. Even though it is a little bit awkward question, but that's the first thing we ask, because that is very important. So my Ayurveda teacher, Dr. Vasant Lad, says that science is catching up. You know, science is catching up. Ayurveda has this total same understanding about, like, it's very individual. Not everything will fit for everyone. You know, there is no box like that, which will like, okay, here you go. Have this and you will be resolved. And so we can see that that's happening in a lot of understanding, I think, holistic way of looking at life. And so these tips are very helpful. I think, you know, people can just start, like, we don't have to know Ayurveda, but these are very common sense. You know, they can start there, looking at like, how can you reduce your constipation? And rather than going for constipation medication, can you have like a more water and diet, which is, that's such a beautiful suggestion. I really like it. And I heard about Mediterranean diet, and that helps, like it's a doable, it has more, you know, possible to include in life. So that's a good suggestion. Like I love all these suggestions, and the movements fantastic. Like yoga is, you know, not the crazy yoga, but the yoga which is gentle, which is really good, relaxing practices. I think that's a combination of yoga, Ayurveda can be really, really helpful. So do you design, like, how does say, for example, a client comes to you, so how do you like kind of like treat, can I ask, like, you know, do you design practices for them? Like, how does it work?
So
again, approach than a GP, right? Like, or common like doctor we go to. So I wanted to understand, like, how does it work, like a holistic, understanding. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So I now work in a way that's very different to how I used to work. It's not 10 minutes anymore. It's, when I'm seeing someone initially, it's usually for an hour.
Mhm.
And we definitely go through all the lifestyle elements, like, talk about diet, exercise, sleep, stress management, toxins. Gut health obviously is a big one. Gut health is central to thyroid health, and just quickly going back to what you were saying, there's now also a lot more research on the gut thyroid connection and everything like that as well. But so always consider the lifestyle as foundation, and I do find that in many cases it's a case of if they are doing yoga, we need to go to more restorative practices. I suggest certain yoga channels and things like that, so they can potentially do a little bit of yoga at home, or that they find somewhere locally that's a gentle hatha or a restorative class, or even just simple postures. And I mentioned that in the book as well, even just that the legs up the wall, or just shavasana, just simple. Doesn't have to take long. I think that's also the key thing, that it can get overwhelming with all this advice, but start off with 2 minutes, start off with 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a 1 hour yoga class, and but even just getting into that habit of doing a few minutes before bedtime, or in the afternoon. So those sort of simple postures, or a routine through like a yoga channel. And often, people may be having it, for example, if they're having sort of irregular eating times, let's just try and regulate that eating time, so you're not eating too late or missing meals, because obviously that's not great with the vata, because a lot of people have that sort of vata imbalance as well. So making sure that again, simple things like regular eating times, grounding foods, warm foods, not having cold water. So you can start off with simple things like that. So certainly a lot of that advice can be given often just after that first appointment, when you found out what their life is like. And then further changes, obviously I do blood tests just to look at thyroid, adrenal, the sex hormones, metabolic markers, inflammatory markers, or immune markers. We do a full comprehensive set of blood, so we know we know the whole picture, and we're not just looking at the thyroid, because everything is interrelated. And probably one of the most common tests in terms of functional tests I do beyond the blood test is looking at the gut microbiome. So we now have these stool tests we can do, which look at the gut microbiome, bacteria, parasites, viruses, fungi, and they also give some digestive markers like digestive enzymes and something called zonulin, which is a marker of leaky gut. So there's a lot more testing we can do, but I normally sort of just do as appropriate as well.
That's such a wonderful approach. I mean, the gut is nowadays they're calling it second brain, or how important it is, and microbiome is that understanding is it's actually really important. So people don't even know that a lot of time that how going regularly every day to toilet in the it's so essential for our system. And that's why Ayurveda is first thing is, how is your bowel movement? That's the question, right? Or that should be. And so I can see that this is your approach is very helpful, because it's a common sense, basically, isn't it? I mean, same thing, Ayurveda is also common sense. Like, we start to look at our lifestyle, we start noticing that, okay, digestion is not working, we are going to start bringing positive approach towards that. How can I bring in, without really feeling judgment or feeling guilty about it, just start small steps. So that was a good advice. And I think it's a doable, like 2 minutes yoga to begin with, if you have. And I think people will see how that will reduce their stress, because it's amazing for reduction. Like, legs up the wall is my favorite pose. So it's really good. Good for stress relief. When I wasn't well with the Ross River, I did legs up the chair a lot because I couldn't even straighten my legs at that point. So just legs up the chair, and that was fantastic. Like it was just relaxing. So like modifications like that, you know. Anything else you want to tell our listeners? Anything about like what comes in your mind? What you want to share a little bit more about thyroids and things like that? Yeah.
I think about also living in alignment as well. You know, so this is a different perspective. I mean, it's good to look at all the science and all the functional testing and the blood tests and everything, but just have this other lens and perspective as well, that, you know, often we get symptoms because we're not living in a balance. And obviously, you know, we can discuss all the different aspects of lifestyle, but often, you know, people may not be doing the work that is aligned to them, or they may be in a relationship that's not aligned to them or something. And I think it's a good opportunity to look at, you know, are you living in alignment? And another perspective, I guess, is obviously the you know, the throat chakra. It's all about expression and creativity, communication. You know, is there something in life where that needs to change? And it's also the bit between the head and the heart. Is there conflict there? So it's just another, I guess, perspective, which I think is really important. And, you know, and I know also from my journey, you know, as I started to do something that I enjoyed and I felt more aligned with, rather than how I was practicing back in London. I think, you know, living in that divine flow as well.
Yeah. And so from yogic point of view, like yoga therapy point of view, that's what I will look into. If someone comes to me, I will look into what's happening with the throat chakra, the concept of like, you know, I will tune into like what's holding them back, their heart and brain connection, because that's what it is. And also from Ayurvedic point of view, what's happening with the gut, what's happening with the whole being. And so I'm so like enjoying this conversation because we are on the same page, basically, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm so happy that you have written this book, because this is going to help so many people, you know. I have a question though, and this came up in my mind. So because I think I need to ask this to you. So some of my clients who had a thyroid, they kind of like use it as a almost excuse that, you know, something to blame to, like, I have thyroid, so, you know, I don't. So kind of like a blame game happens. So if that kind of mindset is there, like, how do you, am I putting you on spot or you?
Yeah. It's an interesting one. I know what you mean, and I think I've seen that certainly in people with other, say, mental health conditions as well, that, you know, this is what I've got, it runs in the family, it's genetic, and it's almost like putting the blame onto something else. But it is about taking that responsibility. Yes, there may be genetic reasons, you know, for you know, as with any illness, but it is about taking that responsibility, because there's a lot that we can do as well. You know, even when it comes to conditions which have a, say, genetic basis, there's a common phrase which I like about how genes load the gun, the environment pulls the trigger. You know, taking that control back, that, you know, certain things we can't change, but there's a lot that we can. It's how to fix that mindset. It's a difficult one, but I think even bringing that into awareness when speaking to someone, maybe even going back to trauma and childhood trauma, and again, that's also something that I mentioned in the book, that you know, because there's been so much more research on, you know, adverse childhood experiences, and, you know, huge studies on how events even before like the age of 17 can increase risk of chronic illness into adulthood. So I think often people can bury so much in the subconscious. So no easy answer, but I think often it can come back to trauma from the past as well.
And I asked this when I wasn't meant I didn't want to put you on spot. It's just that the clients who came to me, like half of them have this kind of like, particularly with the thyroid thing. Oh, they kind of like, oh, I have no excuse and I can blame thyroid. Obviously, we worked with the mind, we work with emotions through yoga and the practices, and self-realization came into that after regular practices, that no, it's okay, I can take charge of my health.
Yeah.
But it takes the time. It's just that I just thought I will put it there, in this podcast as well, because if you notice that that's happening, like if blame game is happening, it's basically again conscious awareness, like what are we doing about our own health, taking in charge. I think that's the way to look at. I think that's what holistic wellness is. Basically, you take charge of your own health rather than taking a pill and trying to say, oh, okay, I've taken pill, it should resolve everything.
And even in patients who say that they are on a medication like thyroxine, so as we over time, and this is, it's not an instant thing, but over months to years, often what we find is as they address all those lifestyle factors like sleep and stress management, and again that might involve just not just their own practice, but even seeing a psychologist or a counselor, addressing any past trauma. But as they start to address those lifestyle things, or they may change their work and they're living in more alignment, or in a better sort of home situation, that over time, because the thyroid gland, the body's able to do what it's meant to do itself, that over time, the medication dose reduces. So we don't need to give as much. And in some cases, they may not need it at all.
Yeah, right.
So again, it's not to say people just stop any medication. It's because all those changes will take time. But there are people who have been able to at least reduce their dose, and in some cases come off it altogether.
Wow, wonderful. But make sure those who are listeners, make sure that you do this with your doctors, like going to doctor like Amy, who will help you, don't stop your medication without so just be mindful that you need guidance in this to do that, and wean off very slowly with the doctor's advice. So
and as we know, there's so many like nutrients and herbs and other therapies out there that can really help as well. And if you're just looking at the biochemistry and everything, if we give the thyroid gland the nutrients it needs, there's so many wonderful herbs like ashwagandha, tulsi, brahmi. There's so much evidence for that for them as well now. So I guess it also depends how open people are to changing their lifestyle factors, or taking other nutrients and herbs, or other types of allied health modalities out there that can help as well.
And these herbs are now, you can see, like in a tea forms, and so that's like, it is available. It's not like these are not available. If they're open for it, they're quite amazing. With the ashwagandha though, if you're taking it, it shouldn't be constantly, regularly. There should be break, like after 2 months or so, take a pause for 2-3 weeks, and then you can start again, because this is not something you should take regularly. But other herbs are fine. But again, make sure that you go through a doctor who understand all this, or Ayurveda practitioner. So in Ayurveda, we actually do the herbs as a last resort. Like, we'll go through the lifestyle changes first, and bring in more physical awareness and movements and things like that. I think that's what exactly your approach is. So it's a wonderful, and then it is all backing up with your research work, your, exploration, your studies. So it's amazing, how this is going to be beneficial for so many people. Thank you for doing this. Do you have a website, or like how can, if someone wants to contact you, or want to work with you, like how can we do that? Do you have a website or something like that?
Yeah, I have my own website, which is just dr.amygajjar.com. So DRAMYGAJJAR. So all the information around appointments is on there as well. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as well.
So I'll put all this information, all these in our show notes, so you can, follow Amy, and you can, if you want, if you're in Australia, you can take appointment or things like that. So thank you so much for being here, Amy. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate what you're doing. Amazing work. Is there anything new in pipeline? Anything else?
I definitely want to write more books, but
Right.
I'm still working on that. But there will be more books in future for sure.
Wonderful. Looking forward to that. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate that you're taking this time out of your day. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Bye for now.